He had lived beside the sea without touching it for decades, until a little girl knocked on his door asking for a boat. John was a man who measured his life by what he had lost. The sea, once his greatest love, had become his cage. He had retired his uniform, his ship, and his heart on the day the waves stole his brother. Now he existed in a silent fortress of stone and solitude, a lighthouse that no longer gave light, a man who refused to see the horizon. He had perfected the art of avoidance, turning his back on the vast blue expanse that held his most painful memories. He polished old trinkets, repaired broken things, and meticulously organized his world, as if by controlling the small details, he could somehow control the chaos that still raged inside him. His hands, once steady on a ship's wheel, now trembled only slightly as he worked, a silent testament to the grief that never left. He was alive, yes, but he was not living. He was merely waiting for a storm he was no longer equipped to weather. Don't scroll yet. What he finds next might break you in the best way. The world outside was a place he no longer belonged to, a place of noise and of people with expectations. He had built this lighthouse as a wall between himself and everything that could hurt him. But this small girl, she wasn't part of the world. She was something else entirely. She held a broken piece of wood, a sad excuse for a boat, and her eyes held a simple request that John found impossibly uncomplicated. She saw the lighthouse, a symbol of hope and safety, and saw him, a man she assumed was a craftsman of grand things, a keeper of secrets and wisdom. She didn't see the years of guilt etched into his face, the ghost of a brother haunting his every silent moment. She saw only a man who could help her, a man who could fix what was broken, a man who, she believed, held the key to her small dream. And in that moment, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, John wasn't just a shadow. He was seen. Her innocent plea was a crack in the wall he had spent decades building. It was the sound of something real, something alive, breaking through his carefully constructed silence. And he knew, with a certainty that both terrified and intrigued him, that nothing would ever be the same again. The sea had not forgotten him, and now it was sending a small messenger to call him back to its shore. John didn't have to look at the sea to feel it. He carried the ocean inside him, a constant low roar of regret and sorrow. His younger brother, Michael, had been the opposite, a boy of boundless energy and laughter, whose entire world was the water. They had been inseparable, two boys with salt in their veins, dreaming of the day they would sail beyond the horizon together. But dreams, John had learned, could be swallowed whole by a single wave. Michael had been the better sailor, the braver of the two, the one with a reckless passion for the open water. And so, when the storm came, it was Michael who went back for a stranded fishing boat, a selfless act of heroism that cost him his life. John, on the deck of his own ship, had been too far away, too late. He had watched the lights of Michael's boat disappear into the churning darkness, a scene that replayed behind his eyes every single night. The silence he lived in now was a penance, a way of punishing himself for not being able to save the one person who had mattered more than anything. He believed the sea had taken not only his brother but also his purpose, his joy, and his ability to connect with anyone. He was a survivor who had forgotten how to live. The girl, Lily, saw none of this. She only saw the man with the kind eyes and the big, strong hands that she imagined could fix anything. She held out the small, sad piece of wood, a crude boat she had tried to carve herself, its edges jagged and uneven. She told him, in a voice full of unshakable confidence, that it was a ship for her father, who was away at sea. She didn't know the words were a knife twisting in an old wound. She simply saw a man who could turn her broken toy into something that would make her father proud. John looked from her hopeful face to the pathetic piece of wood, and in that moment he saw not a broken boat, but a fragile, innocent dream. He saw the very thing he had lost, a love for the sea that was pure and uncomplicated, free from the weight of grief and memory. He saw the ghost of his brother in her eyes, a reflection of the same hopeful spirit, and for a reason he couldn't explain, he felt an unfamiliar ache in his chest, a yearning to make this one small thing right, to bring a piece of hope back into the world, even if it was just for a little girl. He looked down at his calloused hands, once again feeling their purpose, their strength. What would you do if the only way forward was through everything you'd buried? Keep watching, because this moment, this choice, will change everything. He found himself working on the boat with a focus he hadn't felt in years. The workshop, once a tomb of silence, was now filled with the gentle rasp of sandpaper and the soft, rhythmic tapping of a small hammer. John worked with a meticulousness that was both a habit and a new form of therapy. Each piece of wood he shaped, each joint he glued, felt like a small act of atonement. He wasn't just building a toy boat, he was reconstructing a memory, piece by broken piece. He found an old, faded blueprint for a simple skiff tucked away in a dusty drawer. It was his brother's handwriting, a design for the first boat they were supposed to build together, a project that was abandoned the day Michael left for his last voyage. John ran his fingers over the faint lines, a phantom touch of his brother's hand. The blueprints were a ghost, a silent accusation, but also a guide. He decided to follow them, to honor a promise he never knew he had broken. He was not just fixing a boat. He was mending a connection to his past, a past he had worked so hard to bury. Lily would come every day, her small frame a beacon of light in the dim workshop. She didn't talk much, but her presence was a constant, gentle hum. She would sit on a crate, her legs dangling, watching him work with an unblinking concentration. Her silence was a different kind of silence than his. It was one of observation, of patience, of trust. One afternoon, she brought a small piece of blue fabric, worn and soft, and asked him to make a tiny flag for the boat. She said it was the color of the sea on a good day. The request hit John like a physical blow. He froze, the hammer in his hand suspended in mid-air. The sea, the color of a good day. It was a concept he had long forgotten, a joy he had willingly erased. He looked at the fabric, then at Lily's innocent face, and he saw the ocean not as a monstrous grave, but as something beautiful, something to be celebrated. The little boat, with its blue flag, was becoming more than a toy. It was becoming a symbol of a different kind of memory, one that was not soaked in sorrow. It was the first time he had allowed something related to the sea to be a source of creation, not destruction. He was slowly, painstakingly, allowing himself to feel again, to remember the good parts, to see the color blue not just as a shade of mourning, but as a hue of hope. The little boat was finished. John held it in his calloused hands, a perfect miniature version of the ship he and his brother had once dreamed of. It was smooth, sanded to a flawless finish, with a tiny, fluttering blue flag at its mast. The weight of it was nothing, yet it felt heavier than anything he had ever held. He knew, with a painful clarity, that his work was not yet done. This boat was not just for Lily's father. It was for him, too. It was a bridge back to the man he had once been, a man who loved the sea without fear. He could have simply handed the boat to Lily and retreated back into the safety of his silent fortress. That was the easy choice, the one he had been making for decades. But as he looked at her expectant face, he knew he couldn't. He had to face it, to walk toward the very thing he had spent his life running from. He had to take the final, terrifying step of allowing himself to feel again, of acknowledging that the sea was not just a place of loss, but also a place of new beginnings. The choice was clear. He could remain a prisoner in his lighthouse, or he could set this small boat and a piece of himself free. He took Lily's hand, a small, trusting hand that felt both foreign and familiar, and together They walked the winding path down the cliff. The wind, which had always been a cold reminder of his isolation, now felt like a gentle push, a force guiding him forward. The sound of the waves, once a deafening roar of regret, was now a soft, rhythmic whisper, a lullaby of forgiveness. They reached the shoreline, the place he had not set foot on in 30 years. He knelt down, the wet sand cool beneath his knees, and placed the small boat into the water. For a moment, it bobbed gently, a fragile testament to his journey. Lily clapped her hands with delight, her laughter a melody that chased away the last vestiges of his sorrow. He watched the boat drift away, the blue flag dancing in the breeze, and for the first time in a lifetime he looked up. He didn't just see the sea, he saw the horizon. The vast, endless blue expanse was no longer a tomb. It was a promise, a symbol of everything that was still possible. He hadn't forgotten his brother, but he had finally found a way to remember him without the crushing weight of guilt. He had learned that healing wasn't about forgetting, but about creating new memories that were strong enough to stand beside the old ones. The world never saw him, but today you did.